Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 2. I hope that you are adjusting well in this class. I can see that many of you already signed up for Connect Plus, but few of you did not. Please take the advantage of 14 days free trial on Connect if you are waiting for any money, as I mentioned last week in my email. So you don't want to lose any homework. Since this is the 8-week class, I'm going to assign lots and lots of assignments every week, and you do not want to miss it because you don't have the textbook. At least you have free access to Connect for 2 weeks. So take the advantage of that and purchase the book as soon as you can, okay? So we covered chapter 1 and 2 last week. And if you studied these two chapters, you probably noticed that we are going over different concepts, different definitions. So we're jumping from one topic to another topic in these two chapters because these two chapters are kind of the foundations of economics. It doesn't matter if you're studying micro or macro. Important concepts like opportunity cost, why we study economics, PPC, circular flow. These were the topics that we covered last week in chapter 1 and 2. So make sure you review all of them. You will get some definitions, questions on definitions, and all these terminologies on the midterm exam, okay? And you don't want to lose points basically over them. This week, we're going to study 2 chapters, chapter 3 and chapter 4. Chapter 3 is about demand and supply. So from now on, we're more focused on just one specific topic, okay, which is really good. So chapter 3 is super duper important. We're going to come back to this concept of demand and supply over and over again. So make sure that you study this chapter pretty well and try to understand, for instance, the difference between demand and quantity demanded. Supply, quantity supply. You probably heard about demand and supply, but we're going to define them in a more kind of scientific way, okay? Pay attention to law of demand, law of supply. Pay attention to the shape of demand and supply. And I posted already some videos, notes on D12. So if you go to week 2, you can find all the materials for this chapter. When we are done with defining demand and supply, we're going to put them together to define our market equilibrium, which is basically the intersection of our demand and supply. So pay attention how we're defining market equilibrium. And then the main important part of this chapter is when we start basically changing or shifting our demand and supply. One important thing that I want you to pay attention is when we define, for instance, the demand, we are going to focus on the relationship between price and how much goods and services that we buy, that we call it quantity demanded, okay? We use this relationship to define our demand. So this is actually where we define the difference between, we understand the difference between demand and quantity demanded, because quantity demanded is just one single number. So if the price of apple is 1.2, I'm going to buy just one apple. So that one apple is my quantity demanded. But if I have different prices and different quantities, different quantity demanded, we like to distinguish between the number of goods and services that buyers buy and the number of goods and services that sellers sell. We call the first one quantity demanded, the second one quantity supply. So we like to distinguish between, first of all, these two. Also, as I mentioned, quantity demanded is just one number. It's just one apple that I buy when the price is 1.2. But if I have different prices and different quantity demanded, then I am defining my demand. And very big assumption we're making here is that all the other factors that can impact your purchasing plans, like your income, your preferences, the price of, let's say, I don't know, oranges as a substitute maybe for your apple. All these other factors are all fixed, okay? So if the price changes, the only thing that is going to change is the number of apples you are going to purchase, that quantity demanded. But if anything other than price changes will shift your demand. So pay attention to shifting the demand. Same thing goes to supply and moving along the demand. You will get lots of questions about that on the midterm exam, okay? So we shift our demand rightward or leftward when anything other than price is changing. If the price of Apple, however, changes, there is no shift in our demand for Apple. The number of Apple that we purchase will change, which is moving from one point to another point on the very same demand curve, okay? And then when we define market equilibrium, we're going to shift again our demand and supply, okay? At the beginning, we shift our demand, we keep the supply fixed, then we shift the supply, we keep the demand fixed, and then we discuss about the complex cases. Complex cases is when we shift the demand and supply at the same time, which is kind of a more realistic thing that is happening in the market, in the actual market, in reality. At the specific time in market, both demand and supply are changing at the same time, and they change actually multiple times, maybe a day in a market, okay, in one specific market. So when we change the demand and supply at the same time, it's more like a realistic way of looking at the market and market equilibrium. And every time that there is a shift in the market, we will end up with a new equilibrium, okay? And all the time we want to see what happened to our price and our quantity at the new equilibrium, okay? So market equilibrium is a very, very stable place in the market where there is kind of a balance between the demand and supply. It is a kind of there's a balance between the purchasing plans of all the buyers and selling plans of all the sellers. So that's a very stable place. That's why the market has a tendency to move toward equilibrium anytime that there is a change in the market, because it's very, very stable. So pay attention to all these definitions. At the end of chapter 3, we also talk about price ceiling and price floor. Read those definitions. I'm pretty sure that you heard about minimum wage. Minimum wage is an example of price floor. What are they in general? Price ceiling, price floor. So whenever the government feels like that's this market price or the equilibrium price is not fair to a certain group of people, workers, household, producers, the government tries to intervene in the market and sets the price, which is more kind of fair for everybody, okay? So price ceiling is when the government sets the price below the equilibrium price, okay? Because the government feels like that the price in the market or the equilibrium price is just too high for everybody. To support certain group of, let's say, households, the government sets the price below the equilibrium price. We call this price that is imposed by the government price ceiling. So the good example will be rent control. Let's say in New York City or San Francisco that the housing is very, very expensive. We have rent control, and the government sets the price or the rent below the equilibrium rent for certain group of households, the low-income households, basically, to support them. So the price will be below, more affordable, basically. The rent will be more affordable for this group of households, okay? So that's called price ceiling. If the government feels like that the price in the market is just too low for, let's say, certain group of workers, then the government sets the price above the equilibrium price, like the minimum wage. So for minimum wage, basically the government is imposing a higher wage rate than what you typically see in the market to support certain group of workers, okay? We call that price floor, or in this example, minimum wage. So remember that price ceiling and price floor are exactly the opposite thing that you think. So price ceiling is below the equilibrium price because the landlords, in the example of rent control, cannot go above that price. That's the price ceiling. That's the maximum rent that they can basically collect from their tenants, okay? And price floor is above the equilibrium price because that's the bottom price. That's a minimum wage. So the employers cannot go below that minimum wage. That's why it's called price floor. So they're exactly the opposite of what you think. Price floor is above, price ceiling is below the equilibrium price, okay? So that's pretty much it from chapter 3. Again, lots of questions will be from chapter 3 on the midterm exam, and we really don't have that much time for the midterm exam. It's an 8-week class. Let me just check my notes. I, of course, try to remind you about all the important dates, deadlines in my weekly emails, so read them please carefully. The midterm exam will be on November 5th through November 9th. Okay, so you have few days to complete it. It will be over chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. We're skipping chapter 5. I posted, of course, all the practice questions, kind of like a handout, kind of review the important topics from each chapter for you guys on D12. So definitely take a look at them and start basically getting ready for the test day, I would say, this week. We're also going to cover chapter 4. Chapter 4 is about market failure. So make sure you know the definition of market failure. And in short, basically, market failure is any time that the market does not produce the optimal amount of output. So when we define market equilibrium in chapter 3, we're also introducing equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity, which are the price and quantity at the equilibrium, at the market equilibrium. So when we are at the equilibrium, there's just one price and one quantity that we have, okay? When the market is not able to produce this optimal Q or the equilibrium quantity, we say that the market failed to produce right amount of output. Sometimes the market makes a mistake. The market sometimes produces too much output. We call it overproduction. Or the market produces too little output. We call it underproduction. In both cases, we have market failure, okay? And we discuss in this chapter that why we have market failure and the reasons behind market failure, which are nothing but our demand and supply, because the market failure is coming from the intersection of demand and supply. So if the demand doesn't do its job, which is, again, going back to chapter 3, I didn't define it because I wanted actually to define it here for you. So demand basically shows how much you want to pay for a specific product as a buyer. Also, the demand shows the relationship between price and how much output you want to buy. If the market doesn't show how much you are willing to pay as a buyer, we have a problem with demand side of the market. We call it demand side market failure. It means that demand is sending a wrong signal into the market. That's why the market is not able to produce that optimal amount of output. So we have market failure. Another reason for the market to fail to produce that optimal amount of output is because of the supply. Supply, as we define in chapter 3, shows the cost of production. It shows the relationship between price and how much output our producers want to produce and want to sell in the market. It shows the selling plans of all the sellers in the market. Sometimes the market is not able to produce the right amount of output because the signals that are coming from the supply side of the market is wrong. So sometimes the supply doesn't show how much the sellers want to sell in the market. It doesn't show the actual cost of production. So we have supply side market failure. So the market fails sometimes either because of demand or because of supply. Then we talk about some of the important examples of market failure. There are tons of examples of market failure. We're going to follow the textbook. So in the textbook, we're just going to discuss about public goods and externalities, positive externalities and negative externalities. So when we discuss public goods, we also talk about private goods, quasi-public goods. So definitely read the definitions for them. I'm going to talk about public goods a little bit. We say that public goods are non-rival and non-excludable in chapter 4. What does it mean? The public goods are non-rival. It means that my consumption will not impact your consumption, unlike private goods, okay? Public goods are like parks that you walk, highways, public schools, Harris County Library on Cy-Fair campus. They're all public goods, right? Airports, they're all public goods. National defense, okay? So they're all non-rival. It means that my consumption will not impact your consumption. Many people can drive in the very same highway at the same time. Many people can use the Harris County Library on campus, of course, before COVID, at the same time. So my consumption will not impact yours, right? Unlike private goods. Also, public goods are non-excludable. It means that nobody can exclude you from using public goods. So what does it mean exactly? It means that even if you don't pay for public goods, you can still have an access to public goods, unlike private goods. For private goods, we're saying that private goods are excludable. If you don't pay for private goods, like for your cell phone, for your jacket, you're not able to use it. You're not able to buy it, right? It's not the same with public goods, and that causes actually a problem. That's why we're saying that public good is an example of market failure. So nobody can exclude you from using it, but are they really free? The answer is no. Public goods are not free. Why not? You pay your taxes, right? So public goods are non-excludable. At the same time, they are not free. But even if you don't pay your taxes, you can still walk in the park. You can still go to the Harris County Library on campus. Nobody will ask you, did you pay your taxes when you want to go to the library, again, before COVID. So that causes a problem with public goods, okay? People are smart. We're all free riders. We love free things. So when people know that public goods are non-excludable, they can kind of get away with their taxes, right? Some of us don't pay taxes. We have the tendency actually to use free products. So if we don't take care of this non-excludability part of public good, eventually we have so many free riders in our economy, in our society. And remember how we define demand side market failure. So people are not willing to pay for public goods because they know that public goods are non-excludable. So we will have a problem with demand side of the market for public good. The demand for public good doesn't show how much the buyers or how much the consumers are willing to pay, because some of us are not willing to pay anything for using public goods. Okay, so this non-excludability part of public good causes a free rider problem, which is going to cause a problem for demand side of the market. And if we do not take care of this problem, the demand for public good actually eventually will go down, and it is possible to kind of vanish. If there is no demand, there won't be any supply, but we still have public goods, right? The important part to know about public good is that the private sector, because of this demand side market failure, is not really interested in producing public goods, okay? Because they get this wrong signal from the demand side of the market. That's why we still need public good. That's why we need to find another producer, and that producer will be the government. So the government is the major producer of public goods. Make sense? We also talk about externalities in this chapter. We have two types of externalities, positive and negative externalities. So externalities in general are extra cost or extra benefit that one person passes to others in the society. If we're talking about extra or additional benefit, we're talking about positive externality, like getting flu shot this season, this everybody is talking about. Of course, people can have different opinions about flu shot, but it's just an example. So when you get your flu shot, you're protecting yourself from getting flu, but at the same time, there's a positive externality, additional externality that you are going to pass to other people around you. The chances that people get flu from you will go down. The probability that you are going to pass the flu virus to somebody else is close to zero because you already got your flu shot. So there's a positive externality that you're passing to others in the society around you. Okay, that's positive externality. But since people are not willing to pay for these positive externality, we have a problem with demand side of the market. So another example for this demand side market failure is positive externalities. Negative externality is the additional cost that one person passes to other and the society, like pollution. So let's say we have a producer that pollutes the air. So when you look at the cost for this guy, for this producer, the total cost doesn't really show the actual cost of production, because this guy is imposing some part of its cost to others in the society. How? By polluting the air and getting away with it. He's not paying anything for this pollution. There's no punishment for this guy, let's say, for now. So there's this negative externality that this guy, or extra cost that this guy is imposing to others in the area. We will end up with having lots of sick people in the area because of this pollution. The cost of healthcare will go up in that area eventually. These are all the negative externalities. Just like public goods, the solution to positive externalities and negative externality is government. In the example of positive externality and flu shot, the government can provide subsidies in the market, because we have demand side market failure. People are not actually going to pay for that extra benefit they are receiving. So we will end up with too little output in the market. But if the government provides subsidies for the producers, we can increase the supply of flu shot. So we will actually kind of eliminate this underproduction, or the gap between the actual production in the market, or actual amount of flu shots, and the optimal amount of flu shot that we want to see in the market. In the case of negative externality, the government can punish this guy that is polluting the air. How? By imposing higher taxes. Okay, if you're polluting the air, you're going to pay for it. So the taxes that the government is going to impose will kind of force this guy to reduce his production, because in the case of negative externality, we will end up with too much output in the market, because the cost for this guy actually is not right. We have a problem with the supply for this guy. He's able to produce too much output, because he's not being punished for the pollution. So higher taxes will force this guy to reduce the supply, and that will help the market with kind of guides the market to produce the optimal amount of output, that equilibrium quantity. Okay. Also in chapter 4, I want you to pay attention to some of the definitions we have. I kind of tried to kind of go over market failure examples and the reasons behind market failure, but we also touched some important concepts like consumer surplus, producer surplus. I already mentioned overproduction, underproduction, so pay attention also to overproduction, underproduction on the graph. So basically this week we have lots of graphs, both in chapter 3 and chapter 4, that I want you to pay attention and try to redraw all the graphs. That's the best way that you can have some practice in the short amount of time that we have this week to cover these two important chapters. Okay, so definitely pay attention to definitions in chapter 4, as well as all these concepts of market failure, demand side market failure, and all those other topics that I mentioned. What else? Let me look at my notes. I kind of went over the important topics. You also have the second discussion to write about. Remember that the first discussion will be closed tonight. So if you didn't post your answers to the first discussion, you still have time. At 11:30 p.m., however, the discussion board will be closed. Remember, to get the full credit for discussion, first of all, you have to answer to the question that I asked on the discussion board. Your answer should be 200 words at least, without your citation, without your resources. Then you have to leave feedback for at least 2 students in your class, and your feedback shouldn't just be, oh, that was really nice. Try to read the discussion, add something extra to your friends' answers. If you don't agree with their discussion, with their answers, just make sure that you discuss it with your friend. So your answers or your feedback to your friends in class should be at least 100 words. Okay, 100 words for the feedback, at least for 2 students. If somebody leaves feedback for you under your answer, you have to get back to that friend and just basically tell him, okay, I read your feedback, thank you so much. Okay, you can have a nice discussion, because the discussion board is our little community here, and the only basically opportunity that you guys have to kind of interact with each other is in the discussion board. And it's really, really easy to get 100 on discussions if you just pay attention how you should write it. So definitely go back and read the requirements that I put on this syllabus, but I try to actually explain it. You're going to lose point if you don't follow them, okay? What else? In my weekly email, I also mentioned about the midterm that I already talked to you about. I also left a video that I want you to watch and know how you are going to take the test. Remember that you need to have a webcam while you are taking the test. Otherwise, you won't be able to take the test at all, and you will get 0. If you don't have a webcam at home, you can borrow a laptop from Sci-Fair. I'm not, of course, sure if they still have it available or not. Just reach out to the college and ask, because webcam is one of the, or the proctor test, I should say, one of the things that I put it on my syllabus, and you have to have a webcam if you want to take the test. It's part of how you can take the test. The test, as I explained in the video, is timed. So we will be closed at a certain time, so pay attention to time. I should see your face at all times while you're taking the test. The test will be recorded. Of course, while you're taking the test, I'm not going to watch anything, but when you are done with the test, then I can go back and check your video. So you need to have your webcam open. I should see your face at all times, and there will be a lockdown browser, as I explained in the email, so you won't be able to open any other basically browsers while you're taking the test. All right, so watch that video. I just wanted to give you kind of heads up about the webcam and everything, about the test, how you can take it, because you really don't have that much time. Your midterm is next week, basically, when we cover chapter 6. If you have time, go ahead, read chapter 6. I'm going to assign it officially next week on Monday. But if you have time, go ahead and start taking a look at chapter 6. Next week, chapter 6 is the chapter we're going to cover. That's the only chapter we're going to cover, because I want you guys to have also some time reviewing the midterm exam material. And this is the very first micro topic that we're going to discuss. If you took macro, you probably remember that the first 5 chapters of our textbook are common between micro and macro, because they are the foundations of economics. So we're going to be focused on micro topics basically starting next week. All right, please let me know if you have any question, anything about the materials, about the assignments. Again, please get Connect as soon as you can. If you do not have Connect, you cannot complete the assignments, you cannot take the exam. All the exams will be on Connect, all the assignments will be on Connect. Discussions, however, will be on D12, as I explained it last week in my video, and also you can take a look at the syllabus one more time. So assignments and exams will be on Connect. Discussion and all the course materials in terms of lecture notes, videos will be on D12. So have a great week. Let me know if you have any question. Also, last week I sent you my very first Goodread email. So I tried to share the articles that I found interesting. I also want to kind of inspire you with some topics for your term paper, because you have a term paper at the end of the, I think after Thanksgiving, I believe. You can check the deadline again. So start thinking about your topic. Let me know if you have any question. You should pick a microeconomic topic. Again, I shared a video with you last week. Make sure that you watch it for the term paper. And that's pretty much it from me. Sorry for the long video, but I tried to explain everything, remind you about everything in my weekly videos, and hopefully you find it helpful. Take care, and I'll see you soon.